So, you've decided you're going to raise chickens, but you're not yet sure how you're going to keep them. Are you going to be using cages or deep litter system like me? Hi guys, how are you? Well, relax, just relax. In today's video, I'm going to be explaining to you everything involved in the two different systems so that you can decide with all the information that you need. And I'm also going to be telling you why I chose to use deep litter system and not cages. No, I'll never use cages. Never. I'm going to be telling you why. Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Daniel. I love poultry farming, very passionate about poultry farming, and on this channel I talk to you guys about poultry farming for now. Yeah, for now. Of course in the future we're going to be doing way more. But in case it's your first time here, don't forget to click the subscribe button and please hit the notification bell, that way you don't miss out on anything. And YouTube likes it when you hit that like button, so I like it too. So please don't forget to hit that like button. So there are very many systems that are used for poultry farming, but today we're going to be talking about the most commonly used systems in commercial poultry farming. Well, at least in Africa, and I know in most of the world, yeah? Deep litter system and battery cages. We'll start by defining them. What is deep litter system? Well, deep litter system is exactly what I have here, yeah? The chickens are kept in a barn, a chicken house just like this. And that barn is usually made of concrete. The floor is made of concrete. Then on top of the concrete, they put litter. The litter can be from very many different materials. I, in particular, use wood chips, but there are very many other materials that can be used. Then you'll have drinkers and feeders. The drinkers and the feeders can be very different. Automatic, manual, all the different kinds. I, in particular, use manual feeders just like this. Well, they are not very manual, they are automatic. You just put the feeds and the feeds will come out. Then there are other drinkers that I've used. In fact, you can check out the video right here on how I make the drinkers that I use on my poultry farm. Then you'll have patches. Patches are these things, I don't know if you guys can see them, where the birds are resting right now. Then you'll have laying boxes where the chickens go to lay their eggs. On the contrary, cages are different. They are made of galvanized wire mesh. They are quite strong and they can be kept in tiers, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4 levels, where the chickens are in cells, usually between 1 to 3 birds per cell. Then the water and the feeds are delivered them either automatically or the feeds could be delivered manually, but the water is always delivered using nipples. Then when the chicken lays the egg, it will just slowly roll down to a place where someone just comes and picks the eggs. So now, what are the pros and what are the cons of each of the systems? We shall start with the type of birds that can be kept in each system. Actually, this one is not a very big differentiator. Well, broilers are mainly kept in the deep litter system, which is the one that I use, yeah? And then layers, it really depends on where you are in the world. In Uganda, because people don't have too much money, they mainly use the deep litter system. But I know in some countries, people who keep it on a commercial level, most of them will use cages. And I'm going to be telling you guys why. But recently, there are more people who are keeping broilers in cages. So ideally, any can be used for keeping whichever kind of birds. Now let's talk about the space that's required for both. When it comes to spacing, the deep litter system, which is what I use, occupies way more space. For example, my birds right now are spaced at a spacing of around 6 birds per square meter. But for cages, because the chickens are kept in tiers and they are very close to one another, very, very close, you can keep a lot of birds in a very small space. So what does that mean? If you're in a place like a city center, or you're in a place where you don't have land and land is very expensive, people usually choose to go with the cages because you can keep very many birds in a really small space. People who have a lot of land can go with my system. Now we shall talk about the initial cost for starting for both of them. Now the initial cost is way higher if you're going to be using battery cages, because you're going to have to buy those battery cages. They are not cheap. They are very, very expensive. Well, depending on which type of battery cages you're going to be using, yeah? There are countries where you have restrictions on which kind of battery cages you're supposed to use, so that the birds, you know, have some space for loitering inside. So that simply means that the battery cages can be very expensive. Unlike me, who doesn't really need battery cages, I just construct my chicken house and I start. And then again, the battery cages will also need concrete on the floor, and their concrete needs to be stronger because the battery cages are very heavy. So the concrete needs to be stronger in order to support the battery cages. And then also the structure. The structure, if you're going to be using deep litter system, the structure is not as expensive because for battery cages, because of the levels of the tiers, the roof has to be very high. The structure, you know, needs to be constructed in a particular way, you know, to be able to support the weight of the cages. So you're going to spend more money while constructing the structure. Unlike me, you can see I can even touch my roof. Of course, there are people who use higher roofs, and that's okay. But my aeration is not bad. So this roof is not so bad for me, and it works just fine. The other thing is that for battery cages, the maintenance cost is way higher. Way higher, because you're going to always, for example, check to make sure the nipples are not blocked. You need to keep servicing the battery cages, you know, make sure they're in good state. Well, I don't have a lot of maintenance to do here, just cleaning, which even someone on battery cages will have to do. Yeah, so the maintenance costs are higher for the battery cages. Now we shall also talk about the labor that's needed. The labor is way lower for the battery cages, yeah, because for example the eggs are just going to be rolling and you just come pick them. You're not going to have to, for example, deliver the feeds every day like I do, because most of the people who use battery cages have automated systems. The drinkers are usually nipple drinkers. You just put water in a tank, it just flows. But people in deep litter system usually have to do, you know, a bit more labor. And what I know is that in battery cages, people who have, you know, you can have 10,000 birds and you have 1 to 3 people managing that. For deep litter system, for you to have 10,000 birds, actually, there are people who have deep litter systems that are also very automated. The feeds are just delivered, the water is just delivered, but that's less common because usually people go in for the deep litter system because they want to save money. So because of that, they end up using the more rudimentary methods, like the ones that I use. Of course, the methods work, but they are more labor intensive. The other thing is the management of the farm. It's way easier if you have battery cages. For example, it's easy to pick out a bird which is not laying. Yeah, very easy to identify a bird which is not laying. You just keep walking along the cages, and then for 1, 2, 3 days you notice, in this spot I never find the egg for 3 consecutive days. There should be something wrong. Yeah, but for me in the deep litter, you know, the chickens will just go into their laying nests and lay. How will I ever know which one has laid, you know? Of course, sometimes I can identify which one is laying. I can pick them and look on the cloaca. With time, I've been able to identify which one is laying and which one is not laying. But it's way harder in the deep litter system. And then again, things like, water, it's very easily delivered in the cages. And then it's way easier to, you know, prevent thefts on a poultry farm if you're using battery cages, because you know that in each section I have 3 birds. In each cell there are 3 birds. So if you're passing by and you find a bird missing, very easy. And in case you're a telephone boss, you know, you're never around and you're always far away, you have to be on the phone, do this. It's easier to manage the farm if you're using battery cages. But I'm also a telephone person because I'm only on the farm 2 days in a week, weekends, because as you guys know, I have to be working, injecting people during the week. So I've been able to manage. I know you guys too can manage, but yeah, that's a very big difference. Then when we talk about the performance of the birds, starting with broilers, the performance of birds is way better in the deep litter system for broilers, because in the cages, as you guys know, as broilers grow, they become heavier and they prefer to rest more of the time as long as they're not eating. And because of that, the galvanized wires in the battery cages can, you know, cause bruises on the chicken breasts. And these chicken breasts are precious and tasty for lots of people. So you don't want to be eating chicken breasts with marks of galvanized wire. I think they are less tasty, isn't it? Anyway, when it comes to the layers, it simply depends on how you manage it. Ideally, talking about it theoretically, it's way better performance in the cages because it's easier to monitor the performance of the birds, and then because the birds are not running, they're not moving around, all that energy will be diverted into laying of eggs. But for my chickens here, you know, they keep running around, and then it can be quite easy. it can be quite hard for you to identify which bird is laying, which one is not laying. So you expect a bit less production. But if you do it very well, like I'm doing it, and you understand how to do everything, you can be able to match the production of battery cages. Then there is disease control. Of course, this is, I think, where the battery cages really outperform the deep litter system, yeah? Because in the deep litter system, as you can see, there is a lot of spillage of water occasionally. If you construct your barn very well, you will avoid spillages. But I didn't do that. I'll probably do that with the next barn that I construct. But there can be a lot of spillages, and those spillages lead to development of coccidia in the litter, and so the chickens can easily develop coccidiosis. And the other thing is that when birds catch a disease in the deep litter system, because they're always running around from one corner to the other, it's very easy for that disease to spread from one bird to the other. Unlike the battery cages, where if a bird gets sick, it's really maintained in one place and it can be more easily controlled. But the other thing that you need to know is that it is easier to identify a sick bird in the deep litter system, because, for example, if I just moved around right now and I scared the birds, you'll see all of them running. So if I see one of the birds is not running, it's slow, it is weak, then I will know that bird has a problem. Unlike in cages where all the birds are just stationary, you need to go and check each individual bird for you to be able to identify whether one is sick or not. And the other problem is that in the cages, the birds, because they're not moving, they develop something called fatty liver syndrome, They develop a lot of fats in their body and their livers become very fatty, and that affects the production of the birds and the general well-being of the birds, causes a lot of stress to the birds. And then again, the birds develop what we call paralysis, because they're not moving, they're just in one place. It's very common for the birds to get paralyzed, for their legs to get paralyzed. Now, when you talk about controlling the manure, it's better or easier in cages, because all the manure will just go in one place, and then once in a while you'll just come and drive out all the manure. But the manure is of way better quality in the deep litter system. This is very nice, compost, This, you take it to your garden, very fertile, very nice. It's literally soil that you can use in your farm, or for vegetables, for flowers, anything like that. It's very, very good. So the manure is of better quality from the deep litter system, because the cages produce wet manure, and wet manure is very, very hard to deal with. Actually, if you're going to be using battery cages, I want to remind you to take very serious thought of where you'll be dumping your manure, because it can be very hard to get rid of. And when it comes to marketing, it depends on where you are. In some countries where there are restrictions on using cages and all those kinds of stuff, you'll find it hard to get market for eggs which are kept in cages, because people will not be buying them because the birds are kept poorly. And so you'll be able to sell eggs which are kept in a deep litter system way more expensively. But really, again, that depends on which country you're in. And then there are chicken vices. Way easier control if you're in battery cages, yeah? Things like feather pecking, things like egg eating, cannibalism. Because the chickens are not really in contact with each other in the battery cages, you never really suffer from such vices. Whilst if you don't control them, if you don't do the right things, it can be very easy to develop such tendencies in the deep litter system. So why do I use the deep litter system and not the battery cages? Well, I was not always like this, yeah? While I was starting out, I also had plans of, getting big battery cages, keeping lots of birds in very big cages, but I didn't have the money, so I had to go with this. But slowly by slowly, I've fallen in love with the birds. Oh, fallen in love with these beautiful creatures. I really love them, and my conscience is just not okay with the idea of keeping them in cages, yeah? I'm just not okay with it. So there's just no way I'm going to be keeping my birds in cages. I want them to roam around, I want them to move around, I want to be able to pick them, cuddle them just like this, and they love it too. So because of that, I'm not going to be keeping my birds in cages. Never. Impossible, yeah? I'll just get better ways of keeping them. You want the birds flying onto patches, things like that. They are happier, they are less stressed. So for me, because I love the birds, I'll make sure I keep them in a deep litter system, or probably in the future I'll even do a free range system. But if you want to use battery cages, I shall not judge you. No, thou shalt not judge. So I will not judge you. You can go ahead, use it. I don't use it because I'm not okay with it, but please just weigh everything that I've told you, and also don't forget to follow your conscience. So guys, thanks again for watching my videos. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the videos. Leave a comment in case you have any question. I'll try to answer them or make a video about it, and come back next time for more videos. Mwah! Love you guys a lot.